There's a dollar figure sitting in your future where saving hard basically stops being the point, and almost nobody ever tells you where it is.
That idea came from Charlie Munger, and he said it in a way that sounded almost cold. Build the first 100 grand, and after that, you're allowed to loosen your grip.
He wasn't joking. There's an actual threshold buried in everyone's finances where your portfolio starts out turning your paycheck.
Cross it, and the grinding, white-knuckle saving that got you there suddenly counts for a lot less than you'd expect.
Today I'm showing you exactly where that threshold sits in 2026 and how to find your own version of it before the year is out.
Here's the part nobody says out loud. For a long opening stretch of your financial life, you are the machine.
Every inch of progress traces back to your own effort. You earn it, you resist spending it, and you park it somewhere it can quietly multiply.
Your contribution rate is basically the entire plot during this stage because your balance is still too tiny to generate anything meaningful on its own.
But money doesn't stay a bystander forever.
Once your holdings pass a certain size, they begin producing gains that first catch up to, and then outrun, whatever you can physically set aside each month.
That handover moment has a nickname. People call it the tipping point. The day your money starts working harder than you do changes everything.
And the second you reach it, your account effectively clocks in as your new business partner.
Don't misunderstand me here, because that early climb is brutally real, and there's no shortcut around it. Munger wasn't being harsh when he flagged that first 100,000 as the toughest stretch of the whole road. He was just stating the math plainly.
Picture a $10,000 balance. A genuinely strong market year might only hand you back $700. That's a nice dinner, not a life-altering event.
At that size, nothing saves you except sheer discipline. You cut where you can, automate what you save so temptation never sees it, and you keep feeding the account even when the number barely twitches. This is exactly the stretch where most people give up, because the payoff stays invisible for years at a time.
The ones who make it through aren't smarter or luckier. They simply stayed seated long enough for phase 2 to show up. Let me walk through why that opening 100 grand feels uniquely punishing, because understanding it is what keeps you from quitting early.
In the beginning, nothing is working for you yet. No momentum, no real returns, no rolling snowball, just your paycheck and your willpower squared off against a mountain that refuses to shrink. You might grind for 2 or 3 straight years and look up to find a balance that a single lucky week could hand a wealthier investor.
That stings, and honestly, it's supposed to.
The reason so few people ever build lasting wealth is that this opening act delivers almost zero visible reward, so they decide the whole system is rigged and walk away right before it tips in there.
Favor the ones who stick it out, or the ones who trust the math, even while the results are still hiding from view.
Watch how this actually played out for someone real. Naomi started with nothing but an average paycheck and a stubborn streak a mile wide.
For 3 straight years, she saved like her rent depended on it, brown, bagged her lunches, nursed an aging car well past its prime, and funneled every spare dollar into cheap index funds.
By the end of year 3, she had roughly $40,000, and honestly, she felt cheated because the market had barely nudged her balance compared to her own sweat. What she couldn't see yet was that she was quietly stacking the base of something much bigger.
By year 7, she crossed $100,000, and something shifted that she could physically feel. A single average market year was now adding almost as much as she was. She'd spent years shoving a stone up a hill by hand, and it had finally started rolling forward on its own.
The reason this trips up so many capable people isn't math, it's emotion.
Humans crave a reward they can actually see, and compounding hands you almost nothing to look at for a long stretch of time.
The balance creeps a few percent higher, it still looks small next to your goals, and your brain starts insisting the whole plan is broken.
That feeling is the most expensive emotion in personal finance, full stop. It talks people into quitting right before the curve finally bends upward.
The countermeasure is to make the process boring on purpose. Set contributions to move automatically on payday before you can talk yourself out of it. Then stop obsessively checking the balance.
Let the dull middle years stay dull.
The people who build real wealth are rarely the flashiest investors in the room. They're the ones who build one simple system, leave it alone, and let time do the one job time is actually good at.
So what flips exactly when you hit that line? It comes down to two competing numbers. The first is how much you personally add each month from your income.
The second is how much your existing balance earns entirely on its own.
Early on, the first number dominates by a landslide because a small pile earns almost nothing, and your contributions have a hard ceiling. You can only trim so much from a salary before there's
Nothing left to cut. Your returns, meanwhile, climb every single year because they're a percentage of a balance that keeps growing. One number stays roughly frozen, the other keeps climbing, and sooner or later they meet in the middle.
The exact instant your yearly return equals your yearly contribution is the moment you've reached the line.
Think of a boulder on a hillside because it's an honest picture of what's happening to your money.
At the top, you're packing it by hand, scraping together every ounce of material you can find, and it feels like nothing is happening.
The rock is small, the slope is long, and every bit of movement is on you.
But once it's big enough to start rolling, it begins gathering material on its own, faster and faster, and your job completely changes. You stop building it and start steering it.
Your money behaves exactly the same way. The tipping point is the moment the rock starts rolling downhill, quicker than you could ever push it by hand.
Watch what this looks like inside a real portfolio as it nears the threshold. Say you've built up to $150,000 invested, and you're still contributing $1,000 monthly, $12,000 a year. In a typical 7% year, that balance alone earns roughly $10,500 without you lifting a finger.
Your own contributions that year total $12,000, so you're nearly neck and neck. The money is almost matching you dollar for dollar.
Push that balance to $170,000 while keeping the same habit, and your returns quietly slip past your contributions.
From that point on, in a normal year, your money is the harder worker in the relationship. You didn't get a raise.
You didn't take on a second job. The pile simply grew large enough to outearn the person who built it.
There's a simple way to find your own number, and you can do it on a napkin tonight. Take the amount you invest across a full year and divide it by the return you expect.
Historically, a broad stock portfolio has returned close to 10% annually before inflation, and around 7% once inflation takes its bite. Use 7% to stay conservative.
Say you invest $500 a month or $6,000 a year. Divide $6,000 by 7% and your personal threshold lands close to $86,000.
Bump that to $1,000 monthly and your line shifts up to roughly $170,000. Push it to $1,500 a month and you cross somewhere near $257,000.
Notice something strange. Saving more actually pushes your line higher, which sounds backwards until it clicks. A stronger saving habit simply means your balance has to grow bigger before it can outpace a bigger version of you. It's worth knowing which accounts this money should live in, because the 2026 tax code is quietly in your corner.
Inside a workplace retirement plan, you can contribute up to $24,500 of your own money this year.
Stack on another $7,500 through an individual retirement account, and every one of those dollars compounds without the yearly drag of taxes, letting your boulder gather speed faster than it would
In a plain taxable account.
And if your employer matches any portion of your contribution, grab every cent of it, because a match is the rare corner of finance that instantly doubles your money before markets even open.
Owen skipped his company match for 6 years because the enrollment paperwork felt like a hassle, and he handed away tens of thousands of dollars in free capital that would have compounded for
decades. Don't make his mistake. Free acceleration toward your line is the easiest yes you'll ever give.
Now watch Munger's number stop sounding like a myth run his original advice through this exact formula. If you're earning the market's full 10% and setting aside roughly $10,000 a year, your crossover lands almost exactly at $100,000.
That figure was never plucked from thin air for effect. It was simply the level where, for a disciplined saver of his generation, the market finally started earning about as much as the person did.
He watched it happen inside his own portfolio and turned it into a challenge for everyone younger than him.
Everything before that line is you hauling the weight up the slope alone. Everything after it, the weight starts rolling by itself.
Let me put real long. Run numbers behind this, because phase 2 is genuinely hard to believe until you see it laid bare.
Take $100,000, add 0 additional dollars, and let it ride at 7%. After 10 years, it grows to nearly $197,000.
Stretch that to 20 years and it becomes roughly $387,000. Give it 30 years with no new contributions whatsoever, and that same $100,000 turns into about $761,000. At the market's full 10%, that ending figure sales past $1. 5 million, same starting balance, same person, 0 extra effort.
The only ingredient added was time. Here's a mental shortcut worth memorizing, the rule of 72. Divide 72 by your expected return, and you get roughly how many years it takes your money to double.
At 7%, your balance doubles about every 10 years. At 10%, roughly every 7. That doubling is the engine you can't grind harder. You can only feed it more time.
One honest disclaimer before we go further, so nobody accuses me of selling a fairy tale.
That 10% figure is an average stretched across nearly a century, and it hides some genuinely brutal stretches.
The market has fallen more than 30% in a single run and taken years to recover fully. It doesn't deliver a tidy 7% every December like a metronome.
Some years you'll open the app and see red, and it'll feel like the entire premise was a lie.
It isn't. The average only shows up for people who stayed, seated through the ugly years, long enough to also collect the good ones.
Fees deserve a mention too. A fund quietly skimming 1% annually sounds harmless, but across decades, it can eat a shocking slice of your ending balance.
Keep costs low and your fund lineup simple. Everything in this video assumes patience and low fees. Honor both, and the line is very real.
If this is already reshaping how you see your own accounts, hit like and stick with Winds of Thought, because the second half is where this gets genuinely freeing.
Let me show you what actually changes once you're on the far side of the line, because this next part surprises almost everyone.
Picture two people who both hit their number at $200,000, and then live completely differently for the next 25 years.
Myril keeps her foot on the accelerator $1,000 a month every single month, no exceptions. Desmond eases off entirely, never adding another dollar, letting his $200,000 ride at 7%.
25 years later, Myril is sitting on roughly $1, 8 million. Desmond, who contributed nothing further, still lands just over $1 million.
Here's the part that stops people cold. Myril poured in $300,000 of her own money across those years, and all of that discipline bought her about $750,000 in extra ending wealth.
That gap is real, and it's absolutely worth having.
But look closely at what actually carried the load. Desmond saved nothing at all, and his balance still grew more than 5 times over on returns alone.
Past the line, the market is the senior partner, and your contributions are the junior one.
I want to be straight with you here, because this is exactly where a lot of finance channels quietly lose the plot.
Saving more never stops helping, it just stops being the whole story. In raw dollars, Myril is clearly better off, and if you can keep feeding your investments, you absolutely should.
What changes isn't whether saving works, it's how much of your growth comes from effort versus how much comes from time.
Early on, nearly every dollar of progress is you. Past your number, most of it is the money itself.
So, grinding twice as hard on your contribution rate, cutting your life to the bone to make it happen, buys you a shrinking slice of the final outcome.
When you're just starting, doubling your savings can nearly double your future.
Once you're well past the line, doubling your savings might only lift the ending number by a third or so, while the market carries the larger share without ever asking you for anything.
Naturally, that raises a question. If saving harder matters less once you cross the line, what actually matters more?
3 quieter things take over the job. The first is simply refusing to sell.
Priya spent 15 patient years building a solid portfolio, then watched it drop nearly 20% in a rough stretch, and moved everything to cash right at the bottom.
She thought she was protecting herself from a loss that only existed on paper. Instead, she made it permanent, then missed the recovery that arrived just months later.
One moment of panic erased more than a decade of discipline.
The second thing that matters is staying invested through the boredom, because the biggest gains tend to land inside a small handful of unpredictable years.
Sit those out on the sidelines, and your entire outcome quietly collapses.
The third is keeping your money somewhere that genuinely compounds. A massive balance sitting in a plain checking account never crosses any line, no matter how large it grows.
There's a mirror image to all of this worth its own warning. Compounding doesn't only work in your favor, it works just as hard against you when you're carrying high interest debt.
A credit card charging above 20% is a boulder rolling in the wrong direction, gaining speed faster than almost any investment ever could.
You cannot invest a balance like that.
So before you chase your crossover point, clear any debt charging you double-digit interest first. It's the highest guaranteed return an ordinary person will ever find.
Think of it as releasing the brake before you try to pick up speed.
Once that anchor is gone, every dollar heading toward your investments finally rolls downhill instead of fighting to stay in place.
This matters even more in 2026 because the ground has genuinely shifted under savers in a way that quietly fools people.
Right now, the best high yield savings accounts pay somewhere around 4%, while an average ordinary savings account pays roughly a third of 1%.
That 4% sounds close enough to the stock market that plenty of people park real wealth there and call it a finished job.
But cash doesn't compound the way ownership does. Inflation this year has been running near 7%, quietly archiving most of what that savings account hands back.
The crossover math only applies to money that's actually invested and genuinely growing, not money sitting still so you can sleep easier.
That distinction is the entire game. The people who reach their number are rarely the ones with the fattest savings account.
They're the ones who let their money own something that grows. Now set all of this against where most people actually stand, because the real figures are sobering.
The typical household under 35 holds under $19,000 in retirement savings. By the mid-50s into the mid-60s, the median only climbs to about $185,000.
Meanwhile, survey after survey finds people believe they'll need around $1.5 million to retire comfortably.
That gap is frightening, and fear pushes people straight toward the wrong move. They assume the only fix is to save even more brutally, squeeze harder, sacrifice a bigger slice of their present.
For anyone still climbing toward their line, that instinct is exactly correct, and you should honor it.
But for the person who already crossed their line years ago and never noticed, most of that extra sacrifice is simply wasted.
Harlan worked double shifts deep into his 60s, terrified he hadn't done enough, never realizing his invested money had long since passed the point where his own labor was the smaller half of the equation. He spent years buying security he already owned. There's one more trap worth naming, because it quietly drags people back down the hill after they've already climbed it.
Crossing the line once doesn't mean you stay across it.
If your spending inflates every time your income does, your yearly savings target climbs right alongside it. And remember, a bigger saving habit pushes your crossover point higher too.
Someone who lets their lifestyle balloon can technically uncross their own line, suddenly needing a much bigger balance just to keep pace with the life they've inflated.
The people who actually win this game let their investments grow faster than their appetites do. They give themselves raises in freedom rather than only in stuff, and that single choice is often the difference between reaching the line early and chasing it forever.
Let me make the payoff concrete, because breathing room stays abstract until there's a real number attached to it.
On the far side of your line, a market averaging 7% hands someone with $300,000 invested roughly $21,000 in a typical year quietly in the background while they sleep and work and live their life.
That's a second income you never had to clock in for. It doesn't mean you quit everything and disappear to a beach. It means the pressure changes shape.
You can absorb a surprise expense without spiraling. Walking away from a toxic job becomes an actual option because your finances aren't standing on the edge of a cliff.
You get to say yes to what matters and no to overtime that doesn't. That's what the line really buys you, not a yacht, but options.
And options might be the truest form of wealth most people never think to budget for. So the real takeaway here isn't that saving suddenly stops mattering.
Your effort and your money simply trade places at a specific, findable moment. Knowing when that moment arrives should change how you spend the years leading up to it.
Before the line, be relentless, feed the account, ignore the painfully slow start, and get yourself across by any honest means available.
After the line, you've earned the right to exhale. You can take the job that pays a little less, but leaves you a lot more alive at the end of the day.
You can stop measuring your own worth by how much you denied yourself that month.
The frantic chapter has an expiration date, and the quiet tragedy is that most people keep grinding for years after it's already passed, purely because nobody ever told them the line existed.
Now you know how to find yours. Run the math tonight. Your yearly investing total divided by 7% is the number that changes how hard you truly need to push.
And if this is landing for you, the natural next step is understanding the money habits that would have carried you here years faster. The kind of plain, practical lessons that somehow never made
it into a single classroom. Like this video, subscribe to Winds of Thought and drop a comment telling me, where do you stand on this journey right now?
Are you still climbing toward that first $100,000, or have you already felt that strange, quiet moment when your money started outpacing you?
Tell me the number you're chasing, the lesson you learned the hard way, and the one habit that moved the needle most in your life. I read every comment, and your story might be exactly what keeps
the next person from quitting right before their own boulder finally starts to roll.